Okay, y'all. Going to put front brake pads and rotors on a 2005 Honda Accord today. Back away and show you that is indeed what this vehicle is. It's one of my daughter's cars. Also want to show you the level of the fluid in the reservoir, if you can see that, and I'll point out why I'm showing you that later on. Introduce me. I'm Jim. Nice to meet you all. First things first, make sure the car is jacked up and safely on stands. Don't want to get hurt. Never rely on a jack alone to hold the car up. And also safety glasses, anything you might need if you're going to be doing any hammering, chiseling, using impact tools. So anyhow, okay. Reason I'm doing this is that the brake pedal and the steering wheel pulses a little bit when you apply the brakes, and the pads, about due for a change. And so I'm going to replace the rotors because the rotors are warped. That's what causes that pulsing. You can have these turned if there's enough thickness left in them. There's a minimum thickness. You have to go to the shop manual and find out what that is. I'm not sure what it is. Don't care because I'm going to replace them. Really, as cheap as these things are nowadays, I don't have them turned anymore anyhow, because just for a few more bucks, usually you can buy new ones. Okay, so let's see. I've already loosened up pretty much everything to speed things up a little, because I'm gonna ramble on enough to take up enough of your time. So anyhow, first things first. Take the caliper off, and if I was just doing pads, what I generally do is I just swing this guy upward like that out of the way and do the pads, and then swing it back down. But we got to take this off to get the rotor off, so I'm going to go ahead and take the top bolt out as well. Another thing is this bolt that holds the hose in place. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out because I've got to get the caliper out of the way, and that'll let me move it further away. So I want to take it and set it over here somewhere that will support it. That's good right there. It's not going anywhere, and it's not putting pressure on this hose. I always check these sliders, or whatever they're called, where the bolts screw into, to make sure they move smoothly and they feel like they've got lubrication on them. The boots look good. And that's something else. If these things are frozen or bound up, that'll probably make you feel some pulsation. If that's the case, you want to pull these out, see if they either need to be replaced. Sometimes you can just clean them up good and re-lubricate them, and everything's fine. So I'm going to pull the pads out now. They had a little bit of life left in them, but it's time for a set. This one has the squealer. You got to remember which one. The new pads have that squealer on them, so we want to make sure we get the right one and in the right location. So I'm just going to lay this down here on the ground out of the way. Also worth mentioning, that was a 12mm wrench to get that out. The bolts back here that hold this assembly on are 17mm. And like I say, I've already loosened them. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I've already loosened them. Sometimes those are pretty tight, but pull this off and lay it to the side. Okay. So the next thing is getting this rotor off, and that's something on these cars in particular that gives people a tough time. These little screws that hold the rotor in place sometimes are really tough to get out. This thing here is called an impact driver. That's typically what you use to get it out. Let me get around here. You'll put it in the screw, smack it a few times with the hammer, and usually it breaks it loose. These I've already worked on to get them loose. I had to end up spraying all around this assembly with a little bit of penetrating fluid. I had to end up smacking these with a, I just took something that I used as a punch generally, and I smacked them a few times with the hammer, and then I was able to get it out with the impact driver. This one down here didn't go as well. The impact driver ended up messing up the place for the slots and all. So I tried another route, which was a chisel and gently tapping it, you know, digging in and tapping it like that, and that broke it loose. There's videos out there on YouTube that go deeper into this. Sometimes people have to drill them. A lot of times you will at least require some heat and some penetrating fluid if they don't come out right away. When you get out, just kind of tap, and this guy right here will come off. Penetrating fluid around here is what really helps, because that is the mating surface. That is what holds this thing in alignment with the rest of the assembly. I think these screws that we, you know, had to pull out were mainly for holding this in place at the factory while the car is being assembled. So a lot of cars I've worked on don't even have these. I'm not putting them back in there. I'm not going to buy new ones and put back in there. I just don't see the need for them. I'm sure people will debate on that, but I've worked on enough that don't have them. I'm not putting them back in. So anyhow, that is off. Throw it to the side. New rotor. Sometimes these things come with a heavy coating of oil, grease, some sort of protectant to keep them from rusting. This one doesn't. So see how that kind of falls off? That's probably why at the factory they put those screws in there. But we're working at our own rate. We got plenty of time. That's not a concern. But at a high-speed factory where they're assembling the cars, you know, several hundreds or thousands of them a day, you know, they put the screw in there to hold that in place so the next guy doesn't have trouble. So anyhow, I'm going to put this back on. One thing I do want to do is wipe these little pieces of like thin sheet metal. It's right here. Some of your brake kits come with these, the more expensive brake kits. This stuff's in good shape on this one, and my brake kit didn't come with that, so I'm just going to clean these up, and it's easier to do with it in my hand than with it bolted to the car, so take a minute to do that. And then we will put it back in place. See, this is how you have to hold that rotor in place to do some of the work from here on out. But like I said, it's no big deal. I am not putting those screws back in because I don't want to have the difficulty of getting them out next time, if there is a next time, you know. This may last until I sell the car. Who knows? So, let's move these up. I would consult the dealership or shop manual if you have access for the torque value on these. There is a torque value, but I've been doing this for so long. I'm comfortable with my own torque settings. Okay. So there's the pad with the squealer on it. And the whole point of that is when this pad wears down to a certain level, this squealer will make a high-pitched squeaking noise. And usually it's all the time. And sometimes it stops when you actually press on the brake. So that alerts you that, hey, something's going on. Your brakes, you need to have them checked out. Generally means you need a new set of pads. And whatever else, you know, rotors. This little pack of lubricant that you get with brakes, or they sell you at the parts store. I always put that on the mating surfaces. Don't put it on here, but on the metal parts where it's metal to metal, where this is touching that, or the caliper piston is touching the back, anything that's metal to metal that's going to move. And that'll help with smoother operation, maybe a little less noise. I'll put a little bit in there. And so, put this guy up in there. Kind of usually set it down in one first and then wiggle it a little till the other one goes in. You know when you get it right, it feels right. It goes right into place with no issue. And see, the other pad that goes on out here doesn't have the squealer on it. There's another pad that has the squealer. This one right here, but it goes on the other side. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put some lubricant on. Oops, put a little in there too. Very dirty job. You have to have you some rags around to keep wiping your hands because this brake dust pretty dirty. Yeah, you use brake cleaner if you bought some. I didn't buy any. Also keep your rotor clean. So anyhow, this guy right here is going to go in here and right in place. And as you push this in, you'll see this all fits perfectly. There's no gaps. Everything goes right together. So next thing is putting your caliper back in place. And I'm going to go ahead and stick my top bolt in. And these things have a flat side that makes up against something on the caliper. That way it holds it in place. It holds it still while you're tightening up these bolts. Like having a wrench on the back side. Okay, so flip that up in place like that. Wipe all this out. So the next thing we have to do is we have to press this caliper piston back in because now we got new pads and this is not going to fit back down over that. I use a big old pair of channel lock pliers. That's what I've always used. I think you can use like a C-clamp if you've got a big one, or you can buy one of those little specialty tools, maybe from Harbor Freight or parts store. This has always worked for me, so this is what I use. You get a lot of leverage with these things, and it takes a few seconds. It's not going to go really fast, and you can see it's going back in ever so slowly. Alright, and that's it. If that thing is stuck or frozen, then you need to get you a new caliper because that's not good, and that could cause you problems with, wearing out the new pads, car pulling to one side, maybe any number of issues you could have. So I'm going to wipe these surfaces down because I'm going to put a little bit of lube on these three surfaces here. Not a whole lot, but just a good coat. And then I want to put a little on this. I mean, this car didn't make any squealing noises, and I didn't see any lube on any of this stuff. It was pretty bone dry, so anything you do like this help out a little bit. Better than doing nothing, I guess. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to lower this guy back down in place, and see it goes right in place. I have to move that slide in a little bit and maybe rotate it a little so this goes back in place. And yeah, I always keep a check on this, make sure I'm not doing anything that's putting it in a bind. So I'm going to put my other screw in my caliper, wiggle it around a little bit till I can start it. Take my 12mm wrench and tighten both of them up. Again, there's probably a torque spec, but I've just been doing this pretty much all my life, all my adult life, so I know what feels right. Now if I was torquing down the head on an engine, it's got multi-bolts and everything's got to be kind of equal, yeah, I would use my torque wrench. Okay, and I want to remember to put this little bolt back in that holds the hose in place. Snug that up. Okay. All right, so I don't know if we can really tell, but one thing I want to show you is when we squeeze that caliper back in, fluid in there has got to go somewhere. Well, it goes back to the reservoir. And I don't know if we can really tell it, but we're going to take a look at the reservoir. I'm not sure in the lighting in here if you can tell, but I can tell it's gone back up a little bit. And what'll happen sometimes is over a period of years when you're doing maintenance, or whoever's doing your maintenance, they're checking the fluid and they're topping it off. Well, sometimes when you squeeze the calipers back in, that fluid will run all over the place. Sometimes it don't. You know, this one looked to be a little low to begin with. So what I'm going to do is, before I start on the other side, I'm going to pump the brakes a couple times to build that, to push the piston back out of here. And it mates with the rotor, the pads and all. Then I'll do the other side, and to do the other side, it's the exact same things as we did over here, nothing different. And when I'm done with the other side, before I crank this thing up and back it out of the shop, I'm going to pump the pedal 2 or 3 good times, because what you'll notice is that if you just do a brake job, hop in the car and back out, the first time you hit the brakes, it's going to go to the floor, and you may run into something. So that's something to remember. And then check the fluid at the very end to make sure it's topped off, and take the car for a test drive, make sure, you know, everything feels good, works good, no strange noises or shimmies or whatever. And I think, you know, I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've been fairly successful, never had any issues. I worked at a Toyota dealership, you know, 20-something years ago, and I've always done all my own maintenance, you know, everything that I could do legally. I mean, I can't do NC inspections and, you know, stuff like that, emissions. But stuff like this you can do, save yourself some money. Just do it safely, because nothing is worth getting yourself hurt over. So anyhow, I hope this has been informative. If you got any questions, post them in the comment section. I maybe can answer them. And I hope this helps someone out. So have a good day. Thanks for watching.